This is going to be an overview of, and I've mentioned a bunch of these before, but this is going to be the overview of my overall issue set. And I know I've talked a great deal about the concept that I don't believe in partisanship, and I don't believe in labeling of people in terms of progressive, conservative, liberal, lefty, righty. It's just like, at this point, to me, the only justifiable reason to call someone a lefty is to promote which hand is dominant. And I say that even though I know that sometimes, just for simplicity's sake, I refer to myself as someone who's a centrist who leans a little bit to the left. But again, in terms of hardcore lefty, and even then, I don't even think that I actually am leaning to the left. I just think that the entire country as a whole has moved to the right, and therefore I'm dead center. Because there was a time when I was centrist, leaning to the right, at least from where things were. My issues are sustainable energy as and sustainable resources as a component of the concept of sustainability and clean and cleanliness in terms of a sustainable world. Equalized and safe food distribution for humans. Contrary to the belief of many, there is no such thing in terms of us as a globe having a shortage of food for people to eat. Okay? None whatsoever. I know it now. I knew it when I was getting sores on my joints less than a year ago from lack of food. Okay? And people out there, there's a whole lot of people that deal with food insecurity. There's a whole lot of people who are dying of starvation outright, not even the bone sores I was dealing with, the whole lot worse, actually dying. Okay, I was in a lot of pain, but I wasn't near death. The fact is that that's absolutely not necessary. So a equalized and safe distribution of food, safe food to go with that. Animal rights, and oh, by the way, safe and healthy food. This is controversial, but I do not necessarily believe that GMOs are safe. Okay, I'm not going to ever say ban them. Okay, but at this point, I don't think that they've been completely proven safe. So I would definitely mandate complete universal labeling every country on the planet. And I would also demand that, as opposed to the buffer zone, which this is now the case, being placed upon the onus of the farmer with regular food, which is to say non-GMO crops, that it should be on the GMO crop creator to protect the non-GMO from spreading, especially since the GMO farming is often done at a larger scale than the non-GMO. So you're dealing with a predatory situation of larger versus smaller, creating further predator-prey relationships, and therefore furthering inequality in terms of income and in terms of ability to earn a living that's fair. Okay? Human rights. Okay? Again, I've talked about the concept of equalized food, safe food distribution, but human rights also go just not towards the safety of people in terms of the food, but also in terms of the concept of human dignity. Yes, we're talking about as well human trafficking. We're also talking about a right to live decently. Human decency is a big thing. Human rights is a big thing. And that includes people who have been labeled as either intellectually disabled or mentally ill, okay, or are physically disabled, okay, any kind, or often this also applies to either immigrants or to people who, yes, they're medically disabled, but also who are poor. This is a human rights concern. For me, I don't begrudge someone who has 100 times the amount of money than I do, or even 1,000 times the amount of money that I do. I begrudge them, and I have issues with them if they use that money to hurt me or to hurt my husband, who has as little, if not less than I do. Which is to say, I don't care if they're out on their yacht somewhere having a blast and, acting like fools, or, it's fine, let them have their extravagant, stuff, as long as it doesn't hurt the planet. They're just having a ball, wasting all their money. Flat out, I don't care if they're out there throwing gold into the ocean. Let them have fun. But if they use their money to say that it's okay for them to, with their bike, run over my husband's foot, and say that they shouldn't be charged with assault if my husband was walking on the sidewalk and they zooming over with their bike, and my husband couldn't get out of the way because at times he does move slow. Guess what? They should be charged with assault and they should go to jail. Okay? They should face punishment. And if they say, "Oh, but here, let me have you," if they use their money to say, "Hey, cop, you look the other way," and the same thing with a judge, hand him a couple of $100,000, that's when I have an issue with the person with the money. Until they do that, they're fine with me. And that's where the issue of income inequality comes into play as a huge human rights issue. And it's also where human services agencies that are supposed to protect people, they break the law, they break their own rules, and there's no accountability to that fact, because the person that's had the rules broken against them has to fight harder and has to spend more energy to fight it than it would be to go around it. And that's one of the reasons that many of us don't even try to fight, because we know, especially against the stuff that's lesser, not that it's not all in all worth it, especially if it was a simplistic system, and not that in the end it doesn't cost us in terms of our health, and in terms of some cases it kills people, but it's a matter of the fact that however illegal it is, however the fact that in many cases the person would, or other party would face criminal charges in some cases, because of the fact that we don't have the money for retainer fees, we just can't do it. Another issue of mine is democracy. And what I mean by that is whether you want to call this a democratic republic or a democracy, either way, in order for it to be a true either one, we have to get rid of the first past the post voting method and change it to what is at times called ranked choice and at times called the single transferable voting method, which ideally they work together. In the end, the single transferable vote is really more well suited towards the concept of Senate Congress, whereas the ranked choice is really more a matter of executive government positions, aka governor and or president of the United States. But really, they're very, very similar, and that's why I kind of call them the same thing. I don't know if they're completely euphemistic, but they're very, very close. And also the concept of we have to get rid of the easily hackable voting machines and easily messable memory cards. In term preset changing the votes, and replace that with hand-counted paper ballots. And with that system, we have to include, and again, the concept of human rights, we have to include a system that allows for people with disabilities to be able to still cast their vote that way. Which means that, yes, there will still be voting machines out there, okay? But they'll be just a more reliable, because right now, the current ballot marking assistance devices, BMID is acronym, they're used for people with all kinds of disabilities to mark their ballot for a scanner later on. But the problem is that they fail. They have about an error rate of about 25%. Listed, it's 10 to 15%. But still, that's a huge problem. There are times when physically I can write a little bit. There are times when I can hold a pen and I'm okay, especially if it's just filling in a bubble. But there are times when I can't. Between bad weather, which that's a major factor, and other things in terms of my straight bubble, sometimes I can't do it. And when we change to the single transferable and or ranked choice voting, which is going to mean either way you're going to both of them include the concept of ranking your choices, and the concept that if you don't have a 6th or 7th choice, then you don't write their names in if there's 6 or 7 choices, in terms of you don't even write them as a possibility for you. So to do that and to have that be legible for me, that makes it harder for me as an individual. And this is one of the reasons that I stress the concept of all of these things need to come together. And keep in mind that I am someone who, when I mention animal rights, by the way, I mention it as an animal rights activist who really wants to see human rights come into play into the animal rights world, because too many times, and this is one of the reasons why, as much as I care about animal rights, and I do, I want to see personhood rights for several creatures, including the great apes, including Cordus corvoi, including that, which is to say that would be up to see the blackbird or raven, but also all of the species that are the I forgot the technical name, the scientific names of the macaw, parrot, and cockatiel. Those and all of the porpoises, okay, they, which is to say are intelligent mammalian sea-dwelling creatures, to me they should be given and granted personhood rights. And yes, many of them are endangered species. The same thing to me goes for elephants. That's a controversial stance. But another, and I know it is, okay, I'm not saying everyone must change to me, I'm saying that's my personal perspective. I also, by the same ilk, have issues though, because I've been raked over the coals at times, and at other times just playing like, oh, you poor thing, over the concept that I really would love to go vegan/vegetarian, but financially I can't do it. And therefore, and in that regard, animal rights, healthy eating, all of a sudden become a class related. and therefore the interchange of human rights, animal rights, income inequality, they're all intersecting into this mess that is living as a socially conscious human being. Shalom, folks.